Welcome back to the Lemon Factor. I'm Chad, and today I have a special video for you, a follow-up to the video I did a couple months ago on aftermarket exhaust for the ND Mazda Miata. In that video, I identified a handful of exhausts. I believe it was 8 or more exhausts that are out there for the ND Miata, and that's not all of them. There's quite a few more exhausts that I didn't include in that review. And I think while that is great for Miata owners, having that many options out there, at the same time, it makes selecting one of those options a little bit difficult, or at least it has been for me. We went through some of their features. We discussed what to look for in an exhaust. And one of the biggest things that I had pointed out was that you really need to hear the exhaust for yourself. So you can look at the construction, what it's made out of, and you can see that on paper. You can check out the cost, see how much it is. But when it comes to actually hearing it, that is very subjective. The tone, some people like different tones. Some people may find something too loud or not loud enough. And in this video, it's a follow-up. And what I've done was I've identified 2 exhausts that I am seriously considering for our 2019 Mazda Miata. So it's still stock. It's taken me a little bit of time to try to hunt down some people that have the exhaust that I'm considering, and I've done that. I've narrowed it down to 2 exhausts, one the Greddy Supreme SP, and the other is the Goodwin Racing Roadster Sport SupperStreet. Anyway, I did narrow it down to those 2, and I'll explain why, but I narrowed it down to those 2. And while in my previous video, I did mention that you really should hear the exhaust for yourself, that's what's taken me so long, is finding people that have the exhaust that I can hear it for myself and find out if I like it. So in that video, I mentioned that the tone of an exhaust is very subjective. So I really wanted to hear those 2 for myself and judge for myself. And I'm really glad I did. So I learned a lot through this. So in this video, with those 2 exhausts, as well as our stock exhaust on our project car here, I am using an app that I've downloaded to my iPhone that, regardless of how accurate it is in measuring decibels, at least the fact that I'm using that app in a consistent manner across all 3 of the cars, I will get a reading as far as how loud it is. And before you start using this video to determine if that exhaust maybe would meet some of your specifications for loudness in your area, if you have those, or at a track, I don't know how accurate it is at measuring decibel, but I do know that using that app, I can compare one car to another, and we can judge for ourselves or see for ourselves what the difference is between the stock, the Greddy Supreme SP, and the Goodwin Racing SupperStreet. Have you picked your exhaust? If so, let me know in the comments. Let me know which one you picked and how you feel about the exhaust. If you haven't picked an exhaust yet, this video might be for you. If you'd like to see how the stock exhaust compares to the Greddy Supreme SP and the Goodwin Racing SupperStreet from a decibel and from my commentary and driving all 3 of these cars with these exhausts, and then later find out which one I plan on buying, stay tuned. Here in the Lemon Factor, we're all about finding the right product for you. Before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, like, share, and leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this video. Let me know if you've bought an aftermarket exhaust and what you think of it. Let me know if this was helpful in you selecting your aftermarket exhaust. I'd love to hear from you. So before I continue with the decibel readings of these 3 exhausts, I want to explain to you why I selected the Goodwin Racing SupperStreet and the Greddy Supreme SP. One of the big reasons is I wanted to make sure that I got a 2.5-inch diameter piping for performance gains. Now, none of these exhausts, especially being an axle back, will give you all that much in the form of performance. You'll get a little bit more if you get the cat back, a little bit more if you do headers. So I'm not expecting a lot, but I would like to maximize my gains in the selection of the exhaust that I choose for our project car. So I did want the 2.5-inch. I wanted stainless steel. I did want something that was for a reasonable price, and the pricing, as you can see from the chart that I had put together during the last video, runs the gambit. And I think the Goodwin Racing is really a fair price. I think it's competitively priced for what you get for the exhaust. And really the big reason why I selected these two is that whether I purchase it initially or at some point, I really want an exhaust that has the capability of having a mid-pipe added on. So turning that axle back exhaust into a catback exhaust. And Greddy, as well as Goodwin Racing, offers that capability. You can either buy it initially or I could add it on afterwards, especially with the Goodwin Racing. Where some of the other exhausts, while there's nothing wrong with them, and if you're considering only purchasing the axle back, so the muffler portion, they probably could fit your needs. But for me, I wanted to make sure that I purchased one that later on I wouldn't have to change if I wanted to add that mid-pipe. So that was one of the key reasons why I selected it. The other one is I did not want an exhaust that is obnoxiously loud. What I do like is in Goodwin Racing the fact that it could purchase separately a glass pack insert, and that will adjust the sound levels. I don't know to what degree or how great it has an impact. We did not have a glass pack, the option that you would potentially buy with the exhaust. We didn't have one, but just the fact that it is out there and it is made to help change the tone, change how loud it is. I like that idea. Meaning, if you bought the exhaust, I put it in there and it's just a little bit too loud, for a nominal extra fee, you can purchase that and put that in there, and hopefully it would tone it down a little bit for you. So I like that. And then I have heard that the Greddy is, comparably speaking, on the softer tone side. So that's the reason why I selected those two. And I'd like to give a shout out to two people that I found on, one, the Mazda.net forum, and the other one on a Facebook group that I belong to. So Zach and Ben helped provide me with the cars to test and the exhaust to test, and let's talk about those. For the stock car, we have our 2019 Mazda Miata RF Grand Touring in stock form that we're going to compare the Greddy Supreme and the Goodwin Racing to. So when it comes to the two cars that we have, both of them are soft tops, so they're not RF, so that may change things a little bit in the testing, and we'll get to that a little later. Both of them are soft tops. One is a 2019 30th anniversary edition, beautiful orange, and that car has the Goodwin Racing SupperStreet exhaust on it. The other car is a 2018, again, maybe would change, the sound a little bit given that it has a lower red line. It's a 2018 club model that has the Greddy exhaust. And one thing to note with the Greddy, that exhaust is a catback that I tested. So he had the mid-pipe installed as well. So it wasn't just the axle back, where the Goodwin Racing is the axle back. So already we start, there's a couple little nuances, to that we have the difference between the RF hard top versus the soft top. And then we have an axle back versus a catback. I do believe, after doing all of the testing, that I have enough data that I don't believe that those differences will add too much or change too much in the decision, and I'll go through that towards the end. Once we have all the data, I'll give you my commentary. So let's talk about how we're going to test. Again, we're testing for sound levels, decibels. Let's not focus on the actual decibel reading number itself. Let's focus on the differences between the stock exhaust versus the Greddy versus the Goodwin Racing. So with that said, I'm going to take a number of different readings with all three of the vehicles. So obviously our baseline readings are going to be coming from our 2019 Mazda Miata RF. And I'm going to take readings at idle, at the exhaust pipe, at idle inside the car. I'm going to give you some readings of what really is considered quiet. You would assume that 0 would actually be quiet, and actually in the house, in an extremely quiet room, which to me, I didn't hear any noise. It actually read 26 decibels. So I think that's important, right? So complete silence is technically, according to the app, not, and according to my ears, not 0, it's 26. So we're going to do readings. We're going to drive the cars mildly, aggressively, try to hit red line. We're going to do it with the top up. We're going to test it with the top down. We are going to do steady state, so we'll hop on the highway, again with top up, top down, put it into 5th and 6th gear, do some readings of steady driving, and give you some feedback as far as what the readings were for each one of these. So why don't we jump into it? Let's take So it's reading about 72 decibels. So I don't know if you could see that, but right at the tailpipe, it's about 76, 77. So it moves around between 100 and 105. I had a peak there of about 107, but it really does sound good. So. And let's see what the reading is at the shifter with the RF hardtop up. It is reading 49 decibels. So let me show you that. At idle, the app is reading about 58 decibels. Just as I speak, just for comparison purposes, it does go up to the high 60s. So 58 at idle. And what are we driving? 56 decibels. So about 78 decibels. So at 5,500 RPMs, actually 75, 80 decibels. Here we go from second. Those were right now.
So this is in 5th gear, and I'm going about 45 miles per hour.
All right, so what did we discover and what's the conclusion here? What's really interesting is that the Greddy I thought would be much quieter than what it turned out to be. And I will attribute a lot of that to the fact that this is a catback system, so it's not just an axle back. I'm really curious to know how much or how loud it would be with just the axle back versus the catback itself. It sounded really, really good. It had all the right tone as you're shifting through the gears, as you're decelerating. It was really enjoyable. However, I will say that living with it on a day-to-day basis, if it were my daily commuter, might be tiring, especially if you were on the highway with it. I do think that there's a little bit of droning with this exhaust, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Greddy axle back was much quieter and didn't have that, that tone or that drone to it. However, I still really like the Greddy, super impressed by it. I love the dual 3¼ inch tips in the back, so it looked really nice. It had a really raspy, growl to it. When it came to the stock exhaust, I was impressed by the numbers. Early on when I first got this car, I did say that the exhaust was pretty impressive. I like how it sounds. With this RF being a stock car, at some point at certain speeds, and especially on the highway with the top down, the wind noise itself definitely drowns out the stock exhaust. The noise, the decibel, is really coming from the wind itself. I don't hear the exhaust at, let's say, speeds of 50, 60, probably 60 miles per hour plus. It is all the wind that's coming through. Now, with that said, I'd be really interested to find out that whatever exhaust I do pick, will I be able to hear that over the wind noise, or is the wind noise just so loud that it would drown out the exhaust itself? So, the Goodwin Racing, I liked it. I like that exhaust. It's really interesting that with the Goodwin, I tested that one out first, and then I tested the Greddy. And when we went to the Greddy, it was very apparent to me early on, even before we ran the numbers, that the Greddy was louder. The Greddy had a deeper tone. It was definitely raspier, but again, that is a catback system, not an axle back like the Goodwin Racing. And that, it would be great to see how Goodwin Racing SupperStreet, Supersport would compare with a mid-pipe to the Greddy catback system. Unfortunately, I don't have access to that. If you're someone in the New England area, in the Eastern Massachusetts area, you have one, let me know, leave a comment, we'll test it. I have no problem revisiting this. If you have any other exhaust and you want to test it, please shout out, we'll run some tests. Or you know what? You can test it yourself. Download the app, run some tests yourself, come back, post a comment, let everybody else see how it compares to what we've done here. And at least, again, from a sound perspective, from a decibel perspective, we can have some relative comparisons. So going back to how it compares, the Goodwin Racing I think is a nice middle ground between the two. I liked it. I didn't find that it was too loud. It had the right noises at the right time, meaning at high RPMs, it really gave out that sporty exhaust note. I like the fact that it comes with an insert that you can either include or not, if you want it louder or not. And then in addition to that, if you want to further muffle some of the tones or the sounds itself, to make it a little bit quieter, you can buy the glass pack. So we didn't have the glass pack insert for the exhaust tip, but in hearing it without it, I don't think it needs it. But at some point, if I thought it would become too loud, I like the idea that I can go purchase that, put that in there, and it would tone it down. So obviously at this point, you probably are aware that I am heavily leaning to the Goodwin Racing Roadster Sport SupperStreet single tip exhaust. I thought it was a perfect balance between the two. I like the fact that I have an option to tone it down. I would really like to hear it with the mid pipe as well. And I may wait a little bit to find out if I can get access to a car that has one before I pull the trigger. Now with that said, I think the Greddy would be great too. Lucky for me, this is not my daily driver. So if I were to put it on there and think that it was a little bit loud, you know what, I have another car that I can drive. But that's important for some of you, or maybe important for some of you that has the Miata as their daily driver. So definitely consider it. So I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, like, share, and leave a comment below. Future videos, especially for the Mazda Miata project car, I'm looking to dyno the car before I do the exhaust, dyno the car after I install the exhaust. I'm really interested in finding out how much horsepower whatever exhaust I do end up purchasing adds to the car. Now, I'm not expecting a ton, but I would like to see that before and after. And then the one thing that's been driving me nuts with this car, honestly, is the steering wheel. You know, that steering wheel is really too thin for my liking. So I've been looking for an alternative aftermarket wheel, and I'll probably do a future video on what's out there, purchase one and then install it. So those are just a couple of the things that I'm looking at doing with the Mazda Miata. Thank you for joining today. Until next time.